If a great sage were about to leave this world forever, what would be the one thing he cared about, held on to, and couldn't bear to let go of the most? In the final moments before the Buddha entered nirvana after 49 years of teaching, most of his disciples had already attained enlightenment to transcend life and death, and the spiritual community he founded was already deeply rooted and fully capable of carrying on the true teachings. By all accounts, his mission was complete, and he should have had no lingering attachments. Yet there was one massive worry remaining in his heart, and he wasn't worried about the disciples standing right next to him, but rather about us, the ordinary people drowning in the endless ocean of suffering, left without a guide during the long, dark age ahead without a Buddha's presence. Between the passing of Shakyamuni Buddha and the arrival of the next future Buddha, Maitreya, there is a massive spiritual vacuum spanning billions of years, and during this dark era, who will protect us, who will show us the way, and who possesses the sheer willpower and compassion to stretch out a helping hand when we need it most? To secure this ultimate contingency plan, the Buddha gathered countless enlightened beings and traveled to a unique realm, the Triastria heaven, where, in front of the entire cosmic assembly, he formally entrusted this heaviest, most grueling responsibility to a single entity, Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, often known as the Earth Store Bodhisattva. Earth represents the ground that sustains all life and contains endless treasures. Store represents a vast vault holding infinite compassion and wisdom. Because of this, Ksitigarbha was appointed by the Buddha to act as the official representative of cosmic wisdom in this modern era, making him the single closest, most accessible, and most deeply connected spiritual guardian for our time. How could he take on such a staggering burden, and what kind of earth-shattering vow did he make to deserve it? To grasp this, we have to trace back to the very origin of this celestial gathering, which is rooted in the most radical expression of parental love and gratitude. The opening of this text, the Ksitigarbha Sutra, is highly unusual because unlike most teachings delivered on earth, this assembly takes place in the heaven of the 33 celestial realms, the palace where the King of Gods resides, begging the question, why did the Buddha travel all the way up there? The text states the purpose clearly from the very first line. The Buddha had exactly one goal, which was to deliver the ultimate teachings to his deceased mother, Queen Maya, who was residing in that heavenly realm. We know that Queen Maya passed away just 7 days after giving birth to the Buddha, and due to her immense virtue, she was reborn in this heaven. Meanwhile, the Buddha spent 49 years meditating, waking up, and teaching on earth to free countless lives. But as his own death neared, he remembered his greatest benefactor, his mother, and used his cosmic consciousness to personally visit her realm to deliver the foundational philosophy that could grant her ultimate mental freedom, repaying the debt of his upbringing in the most profoundly honorable way possible, creating an unparalleled cosmic summit out of what was essentially a private family reunion. The audience for this gathering was equally staggering, as the text records that countless enlightened teachers, cosmic beings, protectors, and even the rulers of the shadow realms from every corner of the universe converged on this single spot to praise the Buddha for his ability to tame restless minds and teach the true nature of joy and suffering within a chaotic world. Why did a family gathering turn into a universal summit? It is because gratitude and parental respect, which seem like ordinary human emotions, are placed at the absolute apex of spiritual practice. The Buddha noted in other texts that gratitude is the ultimate discipline and the ultimate boundary, meaning that if a person can truly honor and love their parents, they are fundamentally protected from making catastrophic moral errors. Gratitude is the launchpad for universal empathy. After all, if a person cannot even love the parents who gave them physical life, how could they ever generate a genuine desire to love and protect all living beings across the universe? Therefore, the Buddha's journey to this heavenly realm was the ultimate masterclass in gratitude, setting the foundational tone for the entire text. And as he introduces Ksitigarbha, we see that the Bodhisattva's monumental journey begins at the exact same starting point: a pure, unreserved love for a mother. This love served as the opening act for the assembly, and the brilliant light of Ksitigarbha's legacy ignited from this exact spark as the Buddha shared two pivotal stories of Ksitigarbha's past lives. The first story happened countless eons ago, involving a young woman born into a privileged priestly class who was a dedicated seeker of truth, but her mother held deep skepticism toward the laws of cause and effect and openly disrespected spiritual values. When the mother passed away, the young woman knew her mother's toxic habits would likely land her in a state of profound psychological torment and suffering, leaving the daughter completely overwhelmed with worry and unable to rest. To rescue her mother, she liquidated her entire estate, bought precious offerings, and visited a grand temple dedicated to the Buddha of that era, praying from the absolute depths of her soul to know where her mother's consciousness had gone. Her sheer sincerity echoed through reality, and a cosmic voice instructed her, "Go home, sit in deep meditation, and within one day and night, you will know the truth." The young woman followed the instructions, and in a state of absolute, laser-focused concentration and grief, her consciousness drifted to the edge of a vast, roaring ocean of blood where she witnessed countless tortured souls being dragged through the waves by terrifying entities. Terrified, she asked the guardian of that realm where she was, and the guardian replied that this was the underworld, the mental matrix where souls who generated negative karma must face their own reflections after death. When she anxiously asked about her mother, the guardian smiled and said, "Your mother was freed 3 days ago and has ascended to a higher heavenly realm, not only because of your profound love and the spiritual merit you generated for her, but because every single soul suffering alongside her in that sector was liberated at the exact same time." Witnessing this boundless ocean of torment completely rewired the young woman's mind. She was no longer satisfied with just saving her own mother, and looking out into the void, she made her very first monumental vow. For infinite generations to come, whenever I encounter a soul drowning in suffering, I will deploy every possible tool and strategy to ensure they achieve complete liberation. The Buddha then shared the second story, which took place in another distant era, featuring another devoted daughter named Bright Eyes whose mother had a destructive addiction to eating thousands of fish eggs and baby turtles, killing countless lives without a second thought. After her mother died, Bright Eyes missed her terribly and begged a highly realized meditator to look into the matrix of reality to find her. The meditator emerged from his deep state and told her, "Your mother is currently trapped in the deepest pits of torment, facing immense agony." Desperate, Bright Eyes was advised to sincerely honor the cosmic consciousness of that era's Buddha, who later revealed to her in a dream, "Your mother will soon be reborn as the child of a domestic servant in your own house. and she will speak just 3 days after birth." Bright Eyes waited anxiously, and sure enough, a servant gave birth to a baby who, on its 3rd day, began to weep and spoke to Bright Eyes, saying, "I am your mother. Because of the immense harm I caused in my past life, I endured unimaginable torture in the underworld, and though your prayers pulled me out, I have been reborn into poverty and am destined to live only 13 years before sliding right back into the dark realms. Is there anything else you can do to save me again?" Hearing her mother's voice coming from a crying newborn was a psychological shock 1,000 times more brutal than what the first daughter witnessed. And clutching the infant in her arms, Bright Eyes stood before the spiritual icons and made the legendary vow that would echo through history. "May my mother be permanently freed from the lower realms, and I swear before the universe that for billions of eons to come, I will rescue every single soul trapped in the underworld, the animal realms, and the states of starvation. Only when every single one of these suffering souls has achieved complete and perfect enlightenment will I finally allow myself to claim full awakening." This is the birth of the famous manifesto. "If the underworld is not empty, I will not become a Buddha. Only when all souls are liberated will I claim enlightenment." My friends, do you see the elegant architecture of this path? From the priestly daughter to Bright Eyes, Ksitigarbha's spiritual journey began with a simple, deeply human love for a mother. This personal affection was the initial fuel that triggered their awakening. But in the process of trying to save one person, their vision was blasted wide open to the collective trauma of all living beings, causing their personal love to evolve into universal compassion, and their private gratitude to scale up into a promise to care for the entire cosmic family. This text is teaching us a fundamental psychological truth. Compassion isn't a rigid, intellectual obligation. It is a muscle that you train, and your home is the very first training ground. A person who cannot find love for their own parents cannot fake a genuine love for humanity. And Ksitigarbha is the ultimate icon of scaling personal gratitude into a universal force field. We have seen how a daughter's love evolved into a cosmic vow to empty the underworld, a vow sparked by the sheer horror of witnessing true suffering. Which brings us to the part of the text that leaves many modern readers confused or uncomfortable: the incredibly graphic descriptions of the underworld. In the text, the Buddha's mother personally asks Ksitigarbha to describe these dark spaces, leading to a breakdown of realms like the unremitting underworld, where wrongdoers are relentlessly hunted by metallic birds, forced to swallow molten copper, or tossed onto mountains of blades and oceans of fire. Many people read this and dismiss it as a superstitious horror story designed to scare people into submission. But if we translate these scenes into contemporary psychological and philosophical language, you will see a deeply profound natural law at work. The underworld described here is not a cosmic prison built by a vengeful deity to punish you. It is the inevitable projection of your own actions, functioning exactly like a psychological Newton's third law of motion. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. In philosophy, this is simply the law of cause and effect, karma, where every single action, word, and fleeting thought is a pebble tossed into a pond, inevitably creating ripples that must return to you. This law is completely neutral, objective, and devoid of emotional bias. It doesn't play favorites, it doesn't hold grudges, and it demands that you take 100% responsibility for your output. Once you realize this, the terrifying descriptions stop looking like threats and start looking like precise psychological reflections. For example, the text states that if someone recklessly wastes food and exploits resources, they encounter a realm where their own form is crushed and ground up repeatedly. This is a literal manifestation of an equal and opposite reaction. If you treat sustenance as disposable garbage, you automatically cultivate an inner environment where you feel crushed and discarded. Similarly, the text notes that if someone uses their words as weapons to gossip, manipulate, and tear others apart, they experience a space where their tongue is painfully stretched and worked over, a precise metaphor showing that the very instrument you use to cause harm inevitably becomes the epicenter of your own psychological torment. The underworld isn't an external geography. It is a reality synthesized entirely by your own toxic output, a mirror forcing you to experience the exact weight of the chaos you put out into the world. Fascinatingly, the text populates these realms with various wrathful guardians and demon kings representing malice, toxic habits, and corruption, which we can easily strip of their mythological armor to view as psychological archetypes, the personification of our own deep-seated hatred, jealousy, and shadow traits. When you let hatred dictate your actions, you are quite literally possessed by your own internal demon king. Yet, the text drops a profound twist, stating that these terrifying entities are actually great enlightened beings in disguise. This tells us that your deepest psychological darkness is also the birthplace of your greatest breakthroughs, because the moment you become aware of your inner malice and consciously integrate and transform it, that terrifying demon instantly transforms into a fierce protector of your peace. Therefore, the vivid descriptions of these darker states are not meant to paralyze us with fear, but to insulate us from it by acting like a detailed user manual for cosmic cause and effect, laying out the consequences of our choices so we can navigate life intelligently, revealing an incredibly deep and protective compassion beneath the harsh imagery. How do we, as flawed human beings who have all made mistakes, use this system to rescue ourselves from sliding into these destructive mental states? Understanding the gravity of cause and effect might induce anxiety, but the text's goal is never to freeze us in fear, but to shock us into awareness and a desire for higher freedom. The text repeatedly promises that if a person simply hears Ksitigarbha's name, honors his representation, or studies this philosophy, they unlock dozens of layers of protection, naturally aligning their lives with abundance and ultimate peace. Why would simply anchoring your mind to a name or a concept hold such immense power? Let's use a modern analogy. Think of Ksitigarbha's legendary vow to stay in the trenches of suffering until everyone is free as a massive, high-powered cosmic broadcast tower that has been transmitting a signal of pure compassion, wisdom, and clarity across the universe for thousands of years. Our ordinary human minds, unfortunately, operate like old radios that are usually tuned to the static-filled frequencies of greed, anger, insecurity, and judgment. The act of reading this text or anchoring your mind to the concept of Ksitigarbha is a deliberate act of changing your internal dial. You intentionally tune your mind away from the chaotic static of daily anxiety and align it with the clean, powerful frequency of universal compassion. Once your internal frequency matches that broadcast, a powerful resonance occurs, instantly overriding your internal mental noise and allowing a deep sense of clarity, resilience, and wisdom to naturally stream through your life. This isn't magic. It's the basic science of focus. What you tune into is what you receive. However, this mental alignment is just the entry-level practice, because the deepest, most authentic way to connect with Ksitigarbha is not to ask him to rescue you, but to actually embody his blueprint. The core of his spirit is a radical willingness to shoulder responsibility. If I don't step into the mess to help, who will? When you show up for your family, support your loved ones, and quietly do the heavy lifting at home without complaining, you are embodying Ksitigarbha. When you face immense pressure at work, take accountability, tackle the hard problems, and refuse to play the victim, you are embodying Ksitigarbha. When you see someone struggling in society and instinctively stretch out a hand, or stand up against a systemic injustice to protect the vulnerable, you are embodying Ksitigarbha. The moment you drop the obsession with your own comfort, step up to the plate, and start carrying weight for the sake of others, you hit perfect resonance with that cosmic broadcast. You become the living embodiment of that protective force right here on Earth. If we look at the big picture of this philosophical journey, we can see that if achieving total freedom and waking up is like a bird soaring into a wide-open sky, it absolutely requires two distinct wings to fly. The first wing is absolute wisdom, and texts like the Diamond Sutra represent the apex of this wing, training us to see through every illusion, shatter the ego, and realize that everything is fluid and interconnected at a cosmic level, giving us the detachment needed to stay unbothered and free. The second wing is absolute compassion, and the Ksitigarbha Sutra is the absolute peak of this wing, teaching us that once we realize everything is an interconnected illusion, we must never fall into cold, cynical apathy, but must instead generate in fierce, beautiful compassion to step into the world, take on responsibility, and show up for others even when it seems impossible. A bird cannot fly with only one wing. If you have wisdom without compassion, you risk becoming cold, detached, and spiritually arrogant, locked in your own little bubble. If you have compassion without wisdom, you risk becoming emotionally overwhelmed, burning out, and turning into an anxious people pleaser. True maturity is the seamless integration of both, combining a brilliant, clear mind with a fiercely loving heart, which is the ultimate takeaway of our journey. May we use the sharp clarity of wisdom to free our minds from friction, and use the deep blueprint of compassion to show up fully in our everyday lives, using a transcendent perspective to do meaningful work in the concrete world. Thank you for exploring this long and profound landscape with me. May that clear, resilient peace stay with you. And until next time.